The reflection in his own eye showed his street, but the house numbers ran backward, the cars faced the wrong way, and the trees grew toward the earth. A metallic tang, like ozone after lightning, filled his mouth as he tried to scream. The air itself felt thick and resistant, as if he were pushing through cold syrup. From the inverted houses came a sound, not a whisper, but the dry, papery rustle of something being dragged across old floorboards. His lungs seized. Each breath was a shallow, painful gasp that did nothing to calm the primal dread coiling in his gut. Then he saw it. A figure standing perfectly still under a street lamp, but its shadow stretched in the wrong direction, pointing toward a sun that had set hours ago. The rules of this place were not just broken. They had been rewritten by something that did not care for the world he knew. And in that moment of absolute, paralyzing comprehension, the low hum returned, vibrating up from the pavement and into the marrow of his bones. The text on the store sign reads backward, the IDyllic case. When it opens, the reflection is normal. What if you went to sleep in your hometown and woke up in its perfect, silent copy? Every street was identical, every house a carbon copy, yet hollowed of every soul you cherished. This was no nightmare. It was the grim reality that unfolded, night after night, for the 142 residents of Reflection, Ohio. A cold, metallic scent hung in the air, and the only sound was the faint, wet drip of a forgotten faucet. A deep, instinctual dread took root, settling into the marrow as the town waited, breathless, for the familiar to vanish once more. The most terrifying rule was this: if you stayed awake to witness the phenomenon, you vanished, along with the town you once knew. This was the backstory of a place that existed in the warm, sun-drenched memories of those who left. A place of simple joys, where the air smelled of cut grass and the sound of laughter carried on the breeze. But that idyllic memory was the perfect mask for the horror that slept beneath its streets. Reflection, Ohio, was a postcard-perfect town where barbers knew your grandfather, and the annual pumpkin weigh-in was front-page news. In the Central Park, elderly men played chess beneath ancient oaks, a tableau so idyllic it seemed lifted from a stock photo. This was the tranquil world of Sarah Miller, where every surface gleamed with polished normalcy. But beneath that glossy veneer, something faint and metallic lingered in the air, a scent like old pennies and damp earth. Sarah adored this quiet town, having spent her entire life among its familiar streets and the musty scent of her small community library. She knew every weathered crack in the sidewalks and greeted each patron by name, like old Walter, who visited every Tuesday. But her brother Mike remained the perpetual skeptic, his pragmatism a stark contrast to her deep-rooted affection for this place. Where she found comfort in routine, he saw only the ordinary, a difference that would soon fracture their shared reality. Mike was a contractor, a man of concrete and wiring, things he could trust with his own two hands. He'd often joke about the town's ironic name, Reflection? Only thing it reflects is how dull we all are. And then there was John, the retired physics teacher, whose quiet presence carried the weight of forgotten equations and unspoken theories. John was a man of quiet observation, the first to voice it not as fear, but as a puzzle. Late one evening, he turned to Sarah, his voice low and measured. "Have you ever noticed," he began, "the words hanging in the still air? The light here is wrong." Just after sunset, each evening, for precisely 3 minutes, the world's shadows betrayed their natural course, stretching eastward instead of west. It was a minute fracture in their reality, a single thread in the tapestry beginning to fray. The air grew heavy with the scent of ozone, as if the sky itself had been torn. A primal dread took hold, whispering that this flaw was not an error, but a warning. Sarah walked home at dusk, her shadow stretching ahead of her like a dark, elongated twin. Suddenly, it wavered, flickering against the pavement as if disturbed by an unseen current. For a split second, the silhouette twisted, its elongated form now pointing directly behind her. She stopped, a cold confusion settling in her chest as the ordinary world held its breath. A child's crayon drawing showed their house, but with the front door impossibly on the opposite wall. The town's ancient weather vane, which townsfolk discovered, twisted exactly 180 degrees every Monday morning. And then the silence. Every resident awoke at 3:17 a.m. to a suffocating, absolute hush. The air grew thick with ozone, as if reality itself had drawn a breath and held it. An unnatural stillness had settled over the world, as if the very air itself was waiting. The familiar sounds of night were absent. No crickets, no rustling leaves. It was the kind of quiet that felt deliberate, a suffocating vacuum where noise should have been. Mike's voice cut through the void, low and insistent. "Come on, Tom, you've misplaced your power drill again? And now your wife's favorite vase has shifted to the left side of the mantle? Just drop it, Mike. We don't talk about it." His breath hitched, the words catching in his throat like a physical obstruction. A faint, metallic scent, like ozone after a storm, lingered in the suddenly heavy air between them. "We don't talk about it." That phrase became the town's unspoken motto, a cellular instinct warning them not to question the nightly change. But John did question it. He set up cameras, simple ones, facing his street. The digital clock in the corner of the grainy black and white footage read 3 hours, 16 minutes, and 59 seconds a.m. The street lay deserted, a still life under the sodium glow of a single street lamp. A sudden, acrid scent of ozone pricked the air, out of place and sharp. Then, a faint, wet scratching sound began, seeming to emanate from just beyond the frame. At 3 hours 17 minutes and 0 seconds, the screen didn't just fill with static mirror inverted into a negative image, every familiar shape becoming a stark, alien silhouette. For 3 long minutes, the world was turned inside out, a monochrome nightmare where light was dark and dark was light. The air in the room grew thick with the scent of ozone and a creeping, metallic chill that clung to the skin. Then, precisely at 3 hours, 20 minutes and 0 seconds, the static dissolved as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving behind only the ordinary screen and a profound, unsettling quiet. The street appeared ordinary once more, but the "Welcome to Reflection" sign at the block's end was now a perfect mirror image. The evidence was undeniable. For exactly 3 minutes each night, the entire town of Reflection would invert. John called this phenomenon the inverse, a material duplicate of reflection, existing in quantum superposition, a perfect copy, waiting in that liminal space between what is real and what might be. Their reality became a coin, endlessly spinning in the void. Heads, their familiar world; tails, the inverse. And every single night, it landed tails. The transition wasn't gentle. The air grew thick with the scent of ozone and old rot, as if reality itself were decaying at the seams. Every surface felt unnaturally cold and slightly damp to the touch, like the chill of a long-sealed tomb. A low, electrical hum vibrated through the bones, punctuated by distant, wet scratching sounds. This was the price of the coin's fall. A world remade into its own sinister echo, where every shadow held a whispered secret, and every corner promised a new, paralyzing dread. Sarah's fingers traced the cracked leather of the town ledger in the silent library, its pages whispering of forgotten years. The entries flowed normally until 1891, where the ink abruptly shifted into perfect, unnerving mirror script. A faint scent of ozone and old paper filled the air as she deciphered the final, chilling entry. It read, "We have made the bargain." The words seemed to pulse with a cold, deliberate weight. The silence preserves us. Do not watch the change. Sarah's voice dropped to a barely audible whisper. A bargain? The next night, Walter, the elderly man from the library, didn't wake up at 3:17 a.m. He'd been curious. He'd brewed a pot of strong coffee and waited by his window, his senses straining against the night. Outside, the low hum returned, a deep vibration that seemed to press against the glass. Through the distorted pane, 2 figures, Sarah and Mike, raced through the deserted streets toward his house. The air in the room grew dense and metallic, like the scent before a storm, as the hum built to a suffocating pitch. Their shadows were jagged, stretching in impossible directions. Sarah and Mike found his house empty. Not just empty of him, but empty of him. No photos contained his image, only the lingering scent of ozone and dust. Walter's name had been scraped clean from the library donor plaque, erased as if he'd never existed in this reflection at all. He'd stayed awake through the night, and when the town switched back at dawn, Walter remained trapped in the inverse. A metallic scent, like ozone and old copper, hung in the air where he stood. Mike's voice cut through the quiet, sharp with panic. It's not swapping places, Sarah. The thing isn't taking objects. It's swapping people. The ones still awake when the change comes. They get left behind. The low hum swelled, thickening the air until it pressed against the eardrums. Then the world itself began to waver, the very space shimmering like a blistering heat haze. The world's colors began leaching away, bleeding into a stark monochrome. It was 3:16 a.m. The change was arriving early, and they were outside, exposed. The air grew heavy with the scent of ozone and distant rot. They sprinted for Sarah's house, the world warping around them like a fever dream. Fences passed through their bodies with a strange, cold resistance, leaving the scent of ozone in their wake. Their own footsteps echoed a second late, creating a disorienting rhythm that clawed at their sanity. They burst through her front door, just as the grandfather clock's pendulum completed its swing to 3:17. Inside, they slammed the door shut, their backs pressed against the wood. Through the grimy windowpane, they watched the street outside finish its grotesque metamorphosis. It is recognizably their own street, yet everything feels profoundly wrong. The oak tree that has always stood sentinel on the left now looms from the right, its twisted branches scratching at a violet sky. Across the street, the neighbor's once vibrant red door had become a cold, matte blue. In the middle of the empty road, figures stood motionless, silhouettes, sharp and dark against the gloom. A faint, coppery scent hung in the air as the figures remained fixed, staring directly at their home. They were not alone in the inverse. The others, who had stayed awake, were here, trapped. And these were not passive shadows. They were ravenous. They began lurching toward the house, their movements stuttering and erratic. The air grew thick with the scent of ozone and decay. Each unnatural motion scraped against the mind, a violation of natural law. Sarah's voice trembled as she pieced it together. The ledger's bargain kept the town safe and prosperous, but the price was clear. This forsaken place required occupants. A metallic scent of old iron hung in the damp air, mixing with the faint odor of decay. Somewhere in the darkness, a slow, wet, dripping echoed, as if the very walls were weeping. The doorknob began to rattle violently, followed by a dozen whispers perfectly synchronized from outside. Their voices merged into a single chilling command that seeped through the wood and into the room. The whispered words, "Stay awake with us," hung in the air, thick with the scent of ozone and damp earth. In that moment of sheer terror, Sarah understood. The spinning coin wasn't random motion. It was maintaining a delicate equilibrium. The town's perfect luck, its eerie prosperity, wasn't a blessing. It was a counterweight. The inverse was the price. A silent, empty mirror world that needed souls to fill its void. Now that debt was being called in. The pounding on the door began. Through the window, the figures became distinct. Their faces matched those in the town's archival photos, yet their eyes were empty, hollow pits. A metallic scent, like old copper, seeped into the room, and the cold radiating from the glass raised goosebumps on their skin. Sarah and Mike made no move to confront them. Fighting was futile. Looking was a risk they couldn't take. Instead, they shut their eyes tight, pressed their hands over their ears, and clung to each other in the room's center. A desperate vigil until first light. The cacophony swelled to its peak, and then, abruptly, nothing. Golden morning light pierced the window. Outside, the street lay undisturbed, birdsong drifting on a crisp breeze. At 6:01 a.m., the sun crested the horizon. They had returned. The nightmare was over. For now, they never spoke of it again. They, like everyone else, learned not to question. A damp, metallic scent still lingered in the air, a quiet testament to what they chose to forget. To accept the 3:17 a.m. wake-up and slip back into uneasy slumber. To live with those subtle, unsettling inconsistencies. The air in the library felt unnaturally still, thick with the scent of aged paper and something faintly metallic, like old pennies. Every rustle of a page or shift in her chair echoed too loudly in the hollow quiet, each sound a sharp intrusion. A primal unease took hold, the kind that whispers you're not just reading history, but brushing against something that hasn't finished happening. A new family had just moved into town. A little girl, Lily, came into the library for a book. As she was leaving, she turned to Sarah with an unsettling observation. Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper that seemed to suck the warmth from the air. "My new house is funny," she murmured. A faint, coppery scent of old pipes seemed to follow her words. "All the doors are on the wrong side." Sarah's smile stiffened, her complexion draining to ash. The bargain's final. Unspoken law is the inverse. For every soul it releases, it must claim another. The town's fragile peace is sustained by a quiet, constant sacrifice. If you ever wander into a town that feels unnervingly perfect, where the evening light takes on an unsettling hue, check your address, study your shadow, but the town's reflection behind her in the window is subtly reversed. A metallic scent hangs in the still air, and the glass feels unnaturally cold to the touch. From somewhere beyond the pane comes the faint, rhythmic scratch of something moving against old wood. Narrator. And ask yourself, which version are you in right now?